Welcome to Wednesday Bible class and the Jesus Encounters series. We've already made it into week number 7. Tonight, Jesus encounters the man born blind. The man born blind is brought to us by the Gospel of John, written by the beloved disciple. He also gave us Jesus encounters Nicodemus and Jesus encounters the Samaritan woman. And we're not through with the Gospel of John. We'll be coming back in some other encounters. But John tells us in the beginning of his book, we're going to read it, in the end of his book, at the end of the Gospel of John, we're going to read it in just a minute. But he tells us why he includes the events that he includes in the Gospel of John. He plainly says, I have selected these events so that you, the reader, will believe that Jesus is the Christ or the Messiah, and that believing on him, you will have eternal life. So John clearly tells us that the reason of his gospel and the reason that he's including these stories, of which this is one, the man born blind, that's one of John's stories, and it's unique to John. We don't find this story in any other gospel. So we know that John has selected this story and he's put it in his book because it's one of the 7 signs that he uses in his gospel to prove to the reader that Jesus is the Messiah, and that if you believe on him, you'll inherit or have eternal life. So John tells us clearly that that is the reason for these things in his book, and that's the reason for the man born blind being in the Gospel of John. There's a few other things that John does that I want to talk to you about tonight, because this encounter is a little bit shorter than the long ones that we've done so far. John fills his gospel with contrasts, such as light and darkness, sight and blindness, which we'll see in the lesson tonight, belief and unbelief, and the daytime versus the nighttime. These are all throughout the Gospel of John, and we'll see all 4 of these contrast categories in the lesson tonight. The story tonight also includes some of John's let's try that word again. Editorializations. Did I get it? Yeah, I got it. John seems to think and know what people are. I'm sorry. I'm having trouble with this, but I'm going to get it out. One of the characteristics of the Gospel of John is his editorializations. John tells us sometimes what people are thinking and why they do the things that they do. It's kind of amazing. It's as if he's in their heads and he's explaining to us, the readers, why some of the people are saying and doing some of the things that they do in his gospel. And we're going to see that tonight. He's going to explain to us some of the words and actions of some of the people in this story. That's just something that John does that we don't find in the other gospels. Another feature of the Gospel of John is using a metaphor of seeing to represent understanding. If you see, that means you understand. If you don't see, or let's put it another way, if you're blind, that means you don't understand. Okay? So John uses that as kind of a dual meaning, and of course, he's going to use it heavily in this encounter tonight, the man born blind. So you already know there's going to be some people in the story that are blind, not physically like the blind man, but they're blind spiritually. And so that's the story behind the story that John gives us in this encounter. To John, blindness is caused not by a physical defect, but by being in the darkness of unbelief, specifically unbelief about Jesus. It's Jesus that is the light of the world. We're going to see that in the lesson tonight. And what that means is he's the one that gives understanding. And so those that are blind can't see who Jesus is, but those that can see come to Jesus, and he gives them eternal life. So that's part of John's behind the scenes story that we'll see tonight. One more thing about this encounter. This is the first of our Jesus encounters that occurs on the Sabbath day. There are 3 times that Jesus healed on the Sabbath day. And it seems like these 3 scenes, and 2 of them are in John, and 1 of them is in the Synoptic Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. It seems like these 3 settings where Jesus heals on the Sabbath day is a perfect setup to show that the religious leaders who should have been the ones to recognize Jesus, who should have been the ones to accept Jesus first, they are the ones that reject Jesus. They are the ones that fight against Jesus, and they are the ones that eventually have Jesus killed. The Jewish leaders, the leaders of the Jewish religion. So Jesus, they should have been the ones to welcome Jesus. They should have been the first ones to recognize him as the Messiah and to bring him in and to set him up and to say, hey, everybody, here's the Messiah, and to tell the people. But they were the ones that fought against Jesus, and they fought and fought and fought against him. And they're going to fight against him tonight. All right? So that's part of that is because Jesus does this healing on the Sabbath day. So we'll talk about that tonight. Tonight we find again that our theme, the Son of Man, has come to seek and to save the lost. Remember, we got that out of Luke 19 with Zacchaeus, our very first Jesus encounter. Tonight, Jesus comes to save this man, not just to give him sight, watch this, but to help him see. Remember what I said earlier tonight, that John uses this double entendre of seeing as understanding? So in the beginning of the encounter, the man is blind, but not only can he not use his eyes, he doesn't know who Jesus is, so he's in spiritual darkness. And by the time Jesus is done with him, he's going to see twice. He's going to see with some new physical eyes, and he's going to see who Jesus is, and he's actually going to accept Jesus as the Messiah in the story tonight and worship Jesus as God. Wow. What an eye-opening experience he has, right? In more ways than one. All right. So, but as I was talking about the Jewish leaders, they're not going to like this, and they're going to kick this man out of the synagogue. We'll talk about what that means when we get to it in the story. But wouldn't you know, Jesus comes seeking for the man, and he finds the man, and that's when they have that conversation that opens the man's spiritual eyes to who Jesus is. He accepts Jesus as the Messiah. He worships Jesus as God. All right, so that's our encounter tonight. Born blind. This man had never seen light or color or faces or even his own reflection in water. He had no memory of sight that his thoughts could return back to. His life was shaped by dependence on other people and his limitations and the assumptions of others who often linked maladies to sin as a cause for that malady. And this is somewhat understandable because back when Moses gave the blessings and the cursings to Israel in Deuteronomy 27:28, the blessings of God were to make Israel rich. This is why the rich young ruler last week was so surprised that he wasn't doing what God wanted him to do because of the blessings. The blessings seem to indicate approval. And by the same token, the curses would seem to indicate God's disapproval. Well, we find out in this story tonight that not all things that are considered curses or that can be used as a curse are always a curse. This man's blindness was not a curse. We'll find out why I can say that when we get into the narrative tonight. But for many people, they would see this man and they would say, oh, it's the result of disobedience to Yahweh. And he's broken the law, and And now he's got one of the curses on him. He's been cursed. He's not blessed. He's not living a great, overcoming, abundant, faithful life. He's cursed, it seems. He can't do anything without help. He can't really move very well, and how can he provide for even his own food? And I'm sure that food was a daily concern for people that were in his condition. So quite a terrible predicament that this man is in. All right, so before we get into his story, I just wanted to show you what John said about his book. Let's read this quickly, Jackie.
Jesus performed many other signs in the presence of his disciples that are not written in this book.
But these signs are written so that you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name.
All right, so that's almost at the very end. There's 21 chapters in John, and so this is chapter 20. It kind of seems like the end of the book, really, and then chapter 21 seems like an appendix that's tacked onto the back of the book. But this is John. It seems like he's closing out here, and it says, Jesus performed many other signs, but these signs that are in the book, which includes the man born blind, are written in his book so that you believe Jesus is the Messiah, that's the Christ, and by believing in him, you'll have eternal life. So that was John's purpose. Now we're going to start with a flashback tonight. Are you okay with that, Billy? Okay, good. Starting with a flashback tonight. Look at this. We're going to flash back to Isaiah because I want to show you something that Isaiah said. This thing about giving sight to the blind was a marker to help Israel identify the Messiah when he comes. Let's read it. In this first instance, this is spoken to Israel by Isaiah. He's speaking for the Lord. And also, Jesus spoke this to John the Baptist. Let's read it.
Behold, your God will come with vengeance. He will save you. Then the eyes of those who are blind will be opened. The ears of those who are deaf will be unstopped. Those who limp will leap. The tongue of those who cannot speak will shout.
Okay, so this is Isaiah. He says, your God is going to come to you, and when your God comes to you, he will save you. Remember, whenever we see the word save, we always think of the name Jesus because that's Yahweh saves. Jesus is Yahweh saves. So anytime we see save, salvation, we think of Jesus. This is Jesus right here. Your God will come with vengeance. He will save you. And what's going to happen? The eyes of those who are blind will be opened. Now, one time is good, but what if it says it again? This is Isaiah 42. This is spoken by the Lord to the Messiah. What did he say, Jackie?
I am the Lord. I have called you in righteousness to open the blind eyes, to bring out those who dwell in darkness from the prison.
Okay, this is the Father telling the Messiah, I've called you to open blind eyes and to bring out those that dwell in darkness. And one more time, just if you need three, here's a third one. This is spoken by Isaiah as if he were speaking for the Messiah. What did he say, Jackie?
The Spirit of the Lord God is upon me, to bring good news to the afflicted and recovery of sight to the blind.
All right, so three times clearly Isaiah is saying that this is going to be a characterizing mark of the Messiah. He's going to open the blind eyes. He's going to restore blindness. So this should have been something that the people that knew the law, the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the rulers, the Sanhedrin, the scribes, the lawyers, they all should have known that this is a mark of the Messiah. It's right here. We found it three times in just this one book. After I found these three, I quit looking. That's enough. I didn't need any more proofs. Maybe there are more. All right, so it's a clear sign of the Messiah. Now, here we go with our narrative. We're going to do the whole chapter 9 of John tonight.
As Jesus was passing by, he saw a man blind from birth.
All right, in the previous chapter, John 8, Jesus is teaching in the temple. So we know that Jesus lived and performed most of his early ministry up in the northern Galilee region around the Sea of Galilee and those towns around there. There were times that Jesus made trips down to Jerusalem, specifically for the 3 annual feasts of Israel. So 3 times a year, Jesus would have gone to Jerusalem. It was on one of these trips that he's passing by, He's in Jerusalem. It does not say he's at the temple, but as he passes by, he sees a blind man from birth. Now, we don't have a lot of details, but there's something about him seeing the man that caused the disciples to react. Apparently, it just wasn't a glance as Jesus was walking by. Maybe Jesus stopped and looked at the man for a minute, stopped to watch him or observe him. But the disciples saw Jesus seeing the blind man. Okay? They see him seeing the blind man.
His disciples asked him, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?"
To me, this is one of the stupidest questions in the Bible. This just doesn't make sense to me. Now, of course, they're in a different time and in a different culture, and I've already spoken tonight about how that the Jews were sensitive to some things and they would consider them curses from God. So to see a man that was born blind seems to be like it could be a curse from God. If it's a curse from God, there's a sin. If there's a sin, the disciples want to know who's the sinner. Who sinned, teacher? I don't know how this man could have sinned before he was born, but that's what they ask him. And as ridiculous as this sounds to us, it's this question that sets off the chain of events for this Jesus encounter. It's like this question, as ridiculous as it is, triggers Jesus to decide this is going to be a day when God's glory is going to be revealed right here, right now. Okay, so who sinned?
"Neither this man nor his parents sinned," Jesus answered. "This came about so that God's works might be displayed in him."
So Jesus turns it around on them. He says, not this, but this. It's not that this man sinned and not that his parents sinned. Jesus said, this is not a curse. This born blindness on this man is not a curse. It's not the result of sin. So we know that all maladies that could be curses, and you read that terrible list in Deuteronomy, and God's got a lot of ways he can mess you up if he wants to curse you. He's got a lot of ways to bless you up and a lot of ways to mess you up. I just made that up, Jackie.
Amazing.
Yes, I know. Jesus said this came about so that the works of God can be displayed in him. Wow. There's so much that we could say about this right now, but we wouldn't be able to finish the lesson, so I'm not going to say anything about it.
"We must do the works of him who sent me while it is day. Night is coming when no one can work."
All right, right here, Jesus introduces the time restriction on his work. And he also includes the disciples in it when he says, we must do the works of him that sent me while it is day. Night is coming when no one can work. So Jesus knows that he's got a limited amount of time. He's here today to save, to seek and save the lost, to heal, to deliver. But he knows the night is coming when he will no longer be the healer and the deliverer, but he will be the one that is brutalized and the one that is forsaken and the one who God the Father turns his back on. And Jesus won't be saving and healing and doing mighty works. He'll be in custody. He'll be in bonds. And he will be abused by the people that he made. Night is coming when no one can work. And it's not just night coming for Jesus, but he said, we, me and you boys, me and you disciples, me and the 12, there's a time limit on all of us because each one of those apostles, each one of those 12 disciples would give their life for the gospel. Their lives would be cut short, They would have early deaths, just like Jesus. He said, follow me to death, and they did follow him to death. But the night is coming, and so Jesus introduces this time restriction, and he says, we have a limited amount of time to do the work of God. We've got to do it now. We can't put it off. And then,
as long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world.
And then Jesus gives us this beautiful phrase, I am the light of the world. As long as I am in the world, I'm bringing understanding to people. I'm bringing people that are in spiritual darkness out of their blindness. People are seeing that I'm the Messiah. They're seeing who I am, and they're believing in me. I'm lighting the world right now while I'm here. Okay. All right. And so now, after he said these things,
After he said these things, he spit on the ground, made some mud from the saliva, and spread the mud on his eyes.
Now, whether he spit from a standing position, or maybe he bent over and spit, maybe he got down on his knees and spit, but however he spit, he had to get down on the ground to make the mud. So he gets down on the ground in front of this man born blind. And Jesus is spitting, he's making mud, and he's putting it on the man's eyes. And then he's spitting because you can't make it all at one time. So he's spitting, he's making mud, and he's putting it on the man's eyes. And he's spitting, and he's making mud, and he's putting it on the man's eyes until he's got mud on both eyes. Spitting, making mud, putting it on the man's eyes. Now, this seems pretty terrible to us, but saliva was commonly believed in the ancient world to have medicinal properties. How about that? Saliva does have a very mild antibacterial component to it, but it's really not strong enough to be a treatment. But they used it anyway. There's a guy that I just met today called Pliny the Elder from the 1st century, and he wrote that spittle, especially morning spittle, was used to treat eye diseases and inflammation in the 1st century. There are other Greco-Roman medical traditions attributing curative or protective properties to the power of saliva. So it was seen as a natural body fluid that could promote healing, but it's not very potent. And, I'm sure some fake doctors got away with a lot of fake spittle remedies, probably. People used to do all kinds of things to get well and to get healing. And that's why Jesus' healing was so phenomenal, because so many people that were at the end of their trying to be healed, several of the encounters, it talks about how they've tried to be healed. Now, this man had nothing he could do to try to be healed. There was no cure. There was no restorative process for this. But here's Jesus spitting on the ground, down on the ground with the man, eye level to the man, so to speak, putting mud in the man's eyes. Now, I cannot read this without having a flashback. I read this and I'm flashing back to Genesis. Read it to us, Jackie.
Then the Lord God formed the man of dust from the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and the man became a living person.
All right, so when I see Jesus spitting on the ground, making mud, putting it on the man's eyes, I think about this. It pops into my mind, because here's the Creator, here's the dust, he's making the mud, and he's making man parts, maybe. He's maybe making little eyeballs. I don't know. I'm just making this up. He probably did not make little balls. It says he put it on the man's eyes. It didn't say the man didn't have any eyeballs, but it's symbolic. It's symbolic. He was born blind. He needed a new set of eyeballs. Jesus fashions some fake eyeballs out of the mud and puts it on the man's eyes. It's symbolic. But here's the Creator making mud and creating new eyeballs. All right. So now this is something we've never done, but this is what I'm calling a back-to-back flashback, because this is so good. We're going to go back to the beginning of John because it applies to this story tonight. But when we go back to the beginning of John for our back-to-back flashback, John flashes us back to the beginning. Let's read it, Jackie.
In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God.
Now, we're not going to read all of this, but in verse 14, we find out with no doubt Jesus is the Word. Jesus is the Word because it says the Word became flesh and we saw him. So this is Jesus right here, this Word that's in blood red. And what does it say next, Jackie?
All things were made through
All
him,
things were made through Jesus. Okay, so he's the Creator.
and without him was not anything made that was made.
Okay?
In him was life, and the life was the light of men. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it.
Here's the light. John starts his book and he's talking about Jesus and he's talking about the light. And here comes the light shining in darkness. That's one of John's favorite themes. And he starts the book with the light and the darkness, and Jesus is the light. All right, it's so good. We got to read a little bit more of it. This is verse 9, and then we skip to 10 through 13.
The true light, which gives light to everyone, was coming into the world.
Okay?
He was in the world, and the world was made through him. Yet the world did not know him.
So here he is, the Creator, the maker of God's creation. And the people that should have known him, the people that he prepared to receive him, that's his own, that's the Jews. They were prepared to receive him. Moses predicted Jesus way back in Deuteronomy. All this time they've been waiting for Jesus. Here he comes. Here he is. And they're blind. The leaders are blind. They can't see who Jesus is. The world did not know him. But what about his own people?
He came to his own, and his own people did not receive him.
Oh, they didn't do any better than the whole rest of the world. For the most part, the Jews did not receive Jesus at any higher rate than anybody else has received Jesus. We find out in the adult Bible class that they're typical just like us. They're people. And the Jews are representative of all people. And a few of them accepted Jesus, and a few of the Gentiles accept Jesus today. All right, but
to all who did receive him, who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God, who were born not of blood, nor of the will of the flesh, nor of the will of man, but of God.
All right, that's that second birth that he talked to Nicodemus about, being born from above. All right, so now back to our story. We're back from the flashback. We're back from the back-to-back flashback. Here's the Creator that made everything. He's making mud. He's putting it on the man's eyes. Okay, let's go.
Go, he told him, wash in the pool of Siloam, which means sent.
Okay, so Jesus has gone through all these motions, a lot of spit. It wasn't just one spit. Couldn't have been. Had to be more spit. I'm trying to see how many times I can... He's gone through all this work, and the man's still not healed. And he puts the whole project on the back of this man and says, you go. Jesus has never seen this man before. Of course, the man's never seen Jesus or talked to Jesus before. Jesus puts the whole responsibility on the man, and he says, you go. And go all the way to the pool of Siloam, which wasn't around the block. It was quite a ways. And then you wash. And that's all he told him. Well, what would you do? I mean, you don't really know Jesus. Maybe he heard of Jesus. It seems like as we get into the story that the man does have some knowledge of God. He's Jewish. We find out that this man is definitely Jewish. He also has some understanding about God. He knows some prophecy. He knows some prophecy from the book of Daniel. Crazy, huh? We're going to see that in just a minute. Okay, so Jesus says, go. He can't see. Maybe he has a helper. What a difficult task Jesus gave him. Jesus didn't even promise him sight. He didn't say, go and you'll receive your sight. Jesus didn't say, I'm going to give you your sight. Jesus didn't tell him much that we have recorded here. He just put the mud on the man and said, go wash in the pool of Siloam. Well, for some reason, this man went. He went, so he left.
So he left, washed, and came back seeing.
Amazing. How did that happen? Well, how did Jesus heal blindness? I want to announce to the class today that I figured it out. I figured it out today how Jesus heals blindness. And I've got it for you on 2 slides right. This is going to be great. You're going to tell everybody that missed tonight what you learned tonight, how Jesus heals blindness. This is what I think. You can judge me. Like Paul said, y'all judge me. So y'all can judge me and decide if I'm right or not. But look at this. Jesus healed blindness. I'm being facetious in this whole story. Some of y'all are looking really intense at me. I'm being facetious. I'm going to go ahead and dispel that tension right there. This is how Jesus healed blindness. Well, he did it obviously according to location. Yeah. Depending on where you're located determines how Jesus heals your blindness. Look at this. In Capernaum, he healed 2 blind men by touching them. Touch. Healed. That's how you do it when you're in Capernaum. If you're in Bethsaida, healing only comes if you are touched by Jesus and then he commands you in stages to do some things. He did that in Bethsaida with this blind man and it worked. That's how you do healing in Bethsaida. Now, what if you're in Jerusalem? This is our story tonight. If you're in Jerusalem, the only way you can restore vision, apparently, is with saliva mud and going to wash in the pool of Siloam, because that's the way it happened. That's how Jesus did it in Jerusalem. So that's how to restore vision in Jerusalem. And what if you're in Jericho with blind Bartimaeus? This is another Jesus encounter. We're going to be covering this in a few weeks. If you're in Jericho, you can just heal by word alone. Jesus just speaks the word. And so that's how Jesus did his healing right there. It depends on where you're located as to how he did it. But that's not all. Wait a minute, Jackie. There's more. Read this to us from Matthew 15.
Moving on from there, Jesus passed along the Sea of Galilee.
Okay, so if you're around the Sea of Galilee, this is how vision is healed. This is how you do it in this location, okay?
He went up on a mountain and sat there, and large crowds came to him, including the lame, the blind, the crippled, those unable to speak, and many others. They put them at his feet, and he healed them.
That's how you do it. If you're around Galilee and you need healing, you have to be put at Jesus' feet. You see that? That's how they did it around Galilee. So if you need healing there, you have to be put at Jesus' feet. But that's not all. There's one more place. And how many was it, Jackie?
Large crowds.
Large crowds, including the lame, the blind, the crippled, unable to speak, and many others. They put him at his feet, and what happened?
So the crowd was amazed when they saw those unable to speak talking, the crippled restored, the lame walking, and the blind seeing.
There you go, because they were put at Jesus' feet. Now, one more time, that's 5 different ways that Jesus healed. And of course, it was dependent on where he was located, how he did it, obviously. And then here's another one, Matthew 21.
The blind and the lame came to Jesus in the temple.
Oh, okay, so here's how you heal in the temple. If you want to get healed in the temple, you have to come to Jesus in the temple. That's how he did it, and that's how the blind people did it, and that's how they got their healing. What happened, Jackie?
And he healed them.
Right there in the temple.
When the chief priests and the scribes saw the wonders that he did and the children shouting in the temple, Hosanna to the Son of David, they were indignant.
All right, so that's the secret of how Jesus restored vision. Depends on where you're located. He could do it so many ways. The point is, Jesus confirmed over and over and over that he was the Messiah. He was the only one giving vision to blind people, like Isaiah said. And here, just to show that he's not reliant on a method, he does it at least 6 different ways. Wow. He's not bound by a method. All right, so we're learning a lot about this. Now, the people are going to talk to this blind man because he's no longer blind. He's up walking around, and everybody wants to know what's going on.
His neighbors and those who had seen him before as a beggar said, "Isn't this the one who used to sit begging?" Some said, "He's the one." Others were saying, "No, but he looks like him."
He's a look-alike. He's a look-alike. It can't be the man because that man was born blind. This is where we find out that he was begging. It didn't say that in the beginning of the story. They're confused. They don't understand this man looks like him. He's walking around. What's going on here?
He kept saying, "I'm the one." So they asked him, "Then how were your eyes open?"
He kept telling them, "I'm the one." They didn't believe it. He said, "No, I'm the one." I didn't believe it. He said, "No, really, I'm the one." He kept saying, "I'm the one." And they said, "How? How?"
He answered, "The man called Jesus made mud, spread it on my eyes, and told me, 'Go to Siloam and wash.' So when I went and washed, I received my sight." "Where is he?" they asked. "I don't know," he said.
He said, "I haven't seen him." That was real funny. He said, "Where is he?" He said, "I haven't seen him. I don't know where he is." Okay, they're trying to get info. Jesus has vanished like he tends to do, But watch what happens. Jesus is letting the situation simmer and heat up, and it's going to be boiling by the time he gets back to the man. But he's letting the situation develop. And so now the Pharisees are going to call this man in and question him. And here's the thing, the Pharisees are some of the religious leaders, but the Pharisees formed as a group of conservative Jews for the purpose of keeping the nation pure, keeping the religion pure, keeping Israel out of idolatry. Because idolatry was so bad that God kicked them out of the promised land. They were out for 70 years, and then it took them twice that long, about 150 years, to reconstitute their nation and their society. So over 200 years, they were in this weird relationship with God where they were still his people, but they didn't have a home, and they didn't have a government, and they didn't have a king, and they didn't have an army, and they were dispersed. But God brought them back. And so the Pharisees formed as a group to protect the nation from not just idolatry, because that was their big problem, but to protect the nation from breaking all the commandments. And so how can they do that? They decided, let's make some traditions that are more strict than the law, so that if people keep the traditions, they are guaranteed they're not going to be able to break the law. The traditions were more strict than the law to have a buffer there so that they knew that they were well within the confines of the law. They were not even on the fringe edge. They were not even close to violating the law because they were keeping the traditions that the Pharisees would give to the people. And these traditions would keep the people hemmed in and keep them on the straight and narrow and keep them from breaking the law. That was their intent. But what it turned out to be was it turned into self-righteousness, because you can't force people to obey the Lord. It doesn't work. It has to come from the heart. Obedience has to come from the heart. It can't be dictated. But they were trying. And now the Pharisees have actually turned into a group of hypocrites. And Jesus is constantly at odds with them and castigating them. And here we go again, another knockdown drag out with the Pharisees. Here we go.
They brought the man who used to be blind to the Pharisees. The day that Jesus made the mud and opened his eyes was a Sabbath. Then the Pharisees asked him again how he received his sight.
How terrible, the day that Jesus made the mud. Oh, that's the sticking point right there. Made the mud. We're full of double entendres tonight. He made the mud. That's against the law. Well, not really. But it's against the traditions of the law. It's against the Pharisees' traditions. They came up with a list of things you cannot do because the law said you're not to work on the Sabbath. And that's it. It wasn't defined. And so in order to make rules for people to obey, they had to define what work was. And one of the things that work is apparently making mud. You can't make things on the Sabbath. And here's Jesus making mud on the Sabbath. Okay, so they want to know, okay, how did this happen again? Tell me one more time.
He put mud on my eyes, he told them. I washed, and I can see.
That doesn't sound logical and reasonable. That nobody's ever done that before. That's never happened. How can that be true?
Some of the Pharisees said, this man is not from God because he doesn't keep the Sabbath.
All right. They've said this about Jesus before, but they're going to say it 2 more times on 2 more healings on the Sabbath day. But here it is again. He doesn't keep the Sabbath. But that's not true. He's just not keeping it the way that they want him to keep it. But you know what? He's keeping it the way God wanted it kept. He's doing good on the Sabbath, even if it requires making mud. It's okay to do good on the Sabbath, Jesus says in other places. So they say he can't be from God because look at the evidence. The evidence says he's not keeping the Sabbath. The man says right here, he made the mud. Disqualified as the Messiah. Cannot be Jesus. He's disqualified.
But others were saying, how can a sinful man perform such signs? And there was division among them.
That is a really good point though, right? I mean, the man was notably born blind. He was a notable beggar. He's walking around. He's seeing things. He's describing things. We know he can see. We can tell he's seeing by the way he's acting. There's a division. 2 problems. He's not keeping the Sabbath, but he's doing these amazing things. This is not the first amazing thing Jesus has done. He's been doing amazing things. He's been doing these signs. And here's another sign. And this one should have rang bells. Because here's the Messiah doing what Isaiah said 3 times. He's giving sight to the blind. It's a marker. It's an indicator. It's a flag to point to the Messiah. And here Jesus is doing it. He's waving that flag and they can't see it because they're blind to who he is. He cannot be from God. He's not from God. This man is not from God. They've already decided he's not from God because of this. All right, so that's their thinking. That's how they came to this conclusion. Let's call the man back in and ask him again. Let's get more information from the source.
Again, they asked the blind man, what do you say about him since he opened your eyes? He's a prophet, he said.
Now we're going to see in this, in the next few verses that the man he's going through changes as to how he evaluates Jesus. In the first time that he said something about Jesus, when they asked him what happened, he said, the man named Jesus opened my eyes. He called Jesus a man, and he said, the man named Jesus. They call him back the second time, and they say, tell us again, what do you say about him? Now the man says he's a prophet. He's speaking for God, is what he's saying. He's saying this Jesus. What do you say about Jesus? Since he opened your eyes, since he opened my eyes, I think he's a prophet. I think he speaks for God. The Jews?
The Jews did not believe this about him, that he was blind and received sight, until they summoned the parents of the one who had received his sight.
They said, this can't be the same guy. He looks like him. It can't be the same guy. Let's get his parents in here. Let's open up an investigation. They're going to open up an investigation. They're going to bring in witnesses. Here we go. They're going to have court right here.
They asked them, "Is this your son, the one you say was born blind? How then does he now see?"
Now, they weren't there. They don't know. And apparently, they don't want to get involved. Apparently, they are afraid of the Pharisees. And this is very typical because they wielded a lot of power. The Pharisees wielded a lot of power in the nation, in the temple, and in the religion. They were powerful.
"We know this is our son, and that he was born blind," his parents answered. "But we don't know how he now sees, and we don't know who opened his eyes. Ask him. He's of age. He will speak for himself."
That really sounds like a cop-out, doesn't it? They don't want to say much. They seem afraid. Okay, so his parents.
His parents said these things because they were afraid.
Oh,
of the
I've already
Jews.
read it. Don't worry, I've already read it. Go ahead.
Since the Jews had already agreed that if anyone confessed him as the Messiah, he would be banned from the synagogue. This is why his parents said, "He's of age, ask him."
All right, so now John's giving us more background info, and the Jews had already agreed that when he says the Jews in John, he's really talking about the Pharisees, the religious leaders, scribes, Sadducees, lawyers, those guys. They had already decided, they agreed that if anyone confessed Jesus to be the Messiah, they're going to ban that person from the synagogue. Let's talk about that for a minute. The synagogue is not the temple. The temple is one. There's one temple in Jerusalem. That's where the sacrifices are performed and offered. That's where the holy place is. That's where the Ark of the Covenant would have been. The synagogues are local Jewish meeting places. It's kind of like a community center. Because the Jewish nation is really synonymous with the Jewish religion, the religious life and the communal life overlap a lot. And so the synagogue would not just have been a religious place, but it would have been a community place. It would have been a place for community meetings. It would have also been a place where there was teaching done. And Jesus frequently, and the apostles frequently went into synagogues in local places, because there's synagogues almost in every town. It's a teaching center. It's a community room. It's kind of like this room right here, maybe, something like this, multi-purpose. The Jews, they couldn't kick anybody out of the temple. I guess they could, but there was specific laws for admittance to the temple. They didn't touch those laws, but they did say what we do have the power to do is ban people from the synagogue, the meeting place. And when you're banned from the synagogue, you're not just kicked out of the local religious group, but your family is also disassociated with the community. And it can be very difficult. If you're in business, people might stop buying your products or your services if you're banned from the synagogue. So there could be financial repercussions if you're banned from the synagogue. So this was really a terrible thing to be banned from the synagogue. And people were afraid of it. That's why his parents said, "We don't want to say much. Ask him and let him speak for himself." So they're afraid. All right, so now they're going to bring the man back again, okay?
So a second time they summoned the man who had been blind and told him, "Give glory to God. We know that this man is a sinner." He answered, "Whether or not he's a sinner, I don't know. One thing I do know, I was blind and now I can see."
Okay. So powerful because it's personal testimony. It cannot be disputed. It cannot be disputed. He says, "I don't know if he's a sinner. I don't know if he broke the law or not by doing this on the Sabbath. I don't know about those kind of things," the man said. But this is what happened to me. I can tell you what happened to me. I was blind and I'm seeing now. You don't have to know everything about the Bible to have a testimony that's effective. You just have to tell what God did for you, and that's indisputable. And that's a very powerful witness to people. So the man is gaining insight about Jesus. He said, I don't really know yet if he's a sinner or not. I do think he's a prophet, but let's keep going.
Then they asked him, "What did he do to you? How did he open your eyes?" "I already told you," he said, "and you didn't listen."
Listen to this. He's getting a little bold. In fact, he's getting very bold. Look at this again.
"Why do you want to hear it again? You don't want to become his disciples too, do you?"
Oh, it sounds like he's ridiculing them, doesn't it? It sounds like he's mocking them. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you want to know more about Jesus so you can be a disciple? Oh, that burned them up. That burned them up. Okay, so now they're going to ridicule the man and they're going to throw him out of the synagogue.
They ridiculed him. "You're that man's disciple, but we're Moses' disciples. We know that God has spoken to Moses, but this man, we don't know where he's from."
All right, they don't know where Jesus is from. They don't know where he came from. They're just sticking with Moses. They said, we're sticking with Moses. We don't know about this guy. We're sticking with Moses. We're safe with Moses. But this man, we don't know where he's from. And the blind man is about to explode upon them. And here he goes.
"This is an amazing thing," the man told them. "You don't know where he is from, and yet he opened my eyes. We know that God doesn't listen to sinners, but if anyone is God-fearing and does his will, he listens to him. Throughout history, no one has ever heard of someone opening the eyes of a person born blind. If this man were not from God, he wouldn't be able to do anything."
Wow. What a convincing argument from this man. Even though he was a blind beggar, he had understanding and he had knowledge. And he's got some wisdom here. He said, if this man were not from God, he would not be able to do anything. And they ridiculed him. He's ridiculing them. He says, it's funny, haha, you don't know where he's from, but he's out here doing the works of God, like giving sight to the blind. And they should have known this is a marker of the Messiah. But they were blind. They couldn't see it. They knew Jesus could not be the Messiah because he's breaking their rules. But he's not breaking God's rules. He's breaking the Pharisees' rules. And they're blind and they can't see it.
"You were born entirely in sin," they replied. "And are you trying to teach us?" Then they threw him out.
All right. So they ridicule him one more time and they throw him out. You know, when you're talking to somebody and they start ridiculing you, that means they've lost the argument and they know it, and they're resorting to mudslinging, so to speak, and ridicule. And I think they knew that they lost this man. They knew that they could not answer him. He had points that they couldn't respond to. And so they just continue to ridicule him and get him out of our sight, kick him out. And then look at this. Now, after all of this, Jesus comes back to do what he always does, to seek and to save the man born blind. Let's see how he does it.
Jesus heard that they had thrown the man out, and when he found him, he asked, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?"
What a way to start. Do you believe in the Son of Man? He didn't say, have you ever heard of the Son of Man? But apparently this man had heard of the Son of Man because he didn't say, what is that? When Jesus said, do you believe in the Son of Man? He didn't say, I don't know what you're talking about. Son of who? What of what? What? He knew what Jesus was talking about when Jesus said, Son of Man. And look what he said.
is he, sir, that I may believe in him?
He said, oh, Son of Man, I know that guy. I want to believe in him. Where is he? Who is he? He knows who the Son of Man is. Now, how does he know who the Son of Man is? I'm going to show you in just a minute. Where is he? Who is he? I want to believe in him. And look what Jesus said.
Jesus answered, you have seen him. In fact, he is the one speaking with you. I believe, Lord, he said, and he worshiped him.
Now, this is really condensed, but I think we can get a little bit more out of this. Jesus said, you've already seen him. In fact, you're looking at him. In fact, he's talking to you right now. In other words, Jesus is saying, I am the Son of Man. And when Jesus identified himself as the Son of Man, he said, I believe it, Lord, and he worshiped him. Now, this man is Jewish. He can't worship anybody but God. So when he worships Jesus, he is worshiping Jesus as the Son of Man. But if you don't know who the Son of Man is, this doesn't mean a whole lot. So, who's the Son of Man? We got to go back. It's not a flashback because we've already flashed back enough tonight, but this is something else. We got to go back and look at this Son of Man because this comes to us from the Old Testament. If we don't know what the Old Testament says, we don't know what the Son of Man is. So here it is right here. Son of Man is the title in the Bible that Jesus uses for himself more than any other title. He uses it over 80 times. He calls himself the Son of Man. At its simplest form, it simply means a human being. What is the son of a man? Another man. So when you say a son of man, you just mean a man, a human being. It emphasizes our physical nature. In the Old Testament, in the book of Ezekiel, one of the major prophets, God frequently calls Ezekiel son of man, just referring to his mortality, his humanity. It's just like saying human or human being. But when Jesus uses this phrase, Son of Man, for himself, it carries a deeper meaning because it comes to us also from the prophet Daniel. I mentioned to you in the beginning that by the time this encounter is over, the blind man, the man born blind, is going to see Jesus as the Savior, the Messiah. And this is where he gets it from. Read this to us, Jackie, from Daniel 7.
I saw one like a son of man coming with the clouds of heaven. He was given authority, glory, and sovereign power. All nations and peoples worshipped him.
Now, this is in the context of a greater vision and a big prophecy, but Daniel specifically uses this phrase, Son of Man, and then Jesus adopted it for himself. Basically, Jesus is identifying with this Son of Man right here from Daniel, who is going to come with the clouds of heaven, and he's going to be given authority and glory and sovereign power, which means all power. All power. All nations and peoples worship him. That means he's God. That means he's God. He's got all power. All nations, all people worship him. The man born blind couldn't see, but he could see enough to know that the Son of Man is the Messiah. And when Jesus said, do you believe the Son of Man? He said, I just want to know where he is because I want to believe in him. And Jesus said, it's me. I'm talking to you right now. And he worshiped Jesus as God. And he recognized him as being the Son of Man. He called him Lord. And now at the end of the chapter, here we go.
Jesus said, I came into this world for judgment in order that those who do not see will see, and those who do see will become blind.
The blind man started out, he could not see, but when it was over, he was seeing. And those Pharisees thought they saw the truth, but they couldn't see it, and they were blind.
Some of the Pharisees who were with him heard these things and asked him, we aren't blind too, are we? If you were blind, Jesus told them, you wouldn't have sin. But now that you say we see, your sin remains.
So Jesus did not cut them any slack at all. He basically said, nope, you can't see. because they didn't see who Jesus was. That was their problem. They couldn't see who Jesus was. So that's our lesson tonight of Jesus Encounters. Those who see that they need Jesus come to see who he is. And those who think they don't need Jesus remain blind. That's Jesus Encounters, the man born blind tonight. God bless you for coming tonight.